Good morning, good afternoon, and good night. For our final myth, which I'll be reading, I'm going to read, it's kind of a quick version of it, but it's one of my favorite myths of all. It is a Greek myth. I'm sorry, we only went over Norse and Greek myths. Those are the books that I had available to me. But today we're gonna go over the myth of Sisyphus. Sisyphus, there he is. All right, Sisyphus, one of my favorite myths. Not it kind of goes along with the fable, and it's been retold in different versions, and you might catch you probably actually heard something essentially. Well, I'll discuss after I read the story. Sorry, there aren't a lot of great pictures for this one. And again, you don't have to do anything, just listen to the story. Sisyphus of Corinth was the cleverest king who ever lived. He was so cunning that he fooled even the gods. One day Sisyphus saw the river god Aesopus, who was looking for his daughter, Aegina. Sisyphus, who noticed everything that was happening in his kingdom, went after him and said, "I'll tell you what has become of your daughter if you'll give my city a spring." Spring like a little water, so fresh water. For the only thing his great city lacked was a good supply of fresh water. Aesopus hated to part with any of his water. He twisted and he squirmed, but at last he struck the ground and a crystal clear spring bubbled forth. "It is Zeus himself who has carried off your daughter," said Sisyphus. "I saw him hurry by with her," and he pointed out to Aesopus the way Zeus had taken. The river god rushed off in a fury and soon caught up with the elopers. Zeus, taken by surprise, had no thunderbolt at hand. So, to save himself and the nymph from the river god's rage, he chained himself into a rock and her into the island of Aegina. That's an actual island. Sisyphus had his spring of water, but Aesopus lost his daughter, and Zeus was furious with Sisyphus for meddling in his affairs. You'll notice that Zeus is actually afraid of the river god even. But yes, and now so they're all mad at Sisyphus. He asked Hades to take him to the underworld and punish him severely. All right, so Sisyphus went to the Hades, the god of the underworld, and said, "You better punish me because Gavin was mad at me." Hades was glad to do his brother Zeus a favor, and he went himself to fetch Sisyphus. When the sly king saw the Lord of the Dead in person, he pretended to be very honored. But why, he asked, had not Hermes, whose office it was to guide dead souls to the underworld, come for him? While Hades searched for a suitable answer, Sisyphus deftly wound a chain around him, and there stood the Lord of the Dead, chained to a post like a dog. So Sisyphus, again being clever, said, "Hey, wait a second. Hades, it's not your job to come get me and take me to the underworld. It's Hermes' job." And Hades, he actually stopped there and thought about that. And while he's thinking about it, he did not notice that Sisyphus was chaining him up. So now Hades, essentially like the Grim Reaper, is chained up. As long as Sisyphus kept Hades tied up, nobody could die. The fates got the threads of life tangled, and the whole world was in confusion. Finally, the gods threatened to make life so miserable for Sisyphus that he would wish he were dead, and Sisyphus then had to let Hades go. Again, people could die, and life could go on normally. The very first soul to be claimed was, of course, that of Sisyphus himself. This time Hermes came from. The wily king who had expected this had told his loving wife not to give him a funeral feast, and not to put a coin under his tongue. So he arrived in the realm of the dead as a poor beggar. Hades was shocked. All right, so based on tradition, you would put coins on a dead person's body to help pay the toll to the underworld or afterlife, per se. After all, Sisyphus was a king and entitled to a funeral feast and golden coin under his tongue to pay for his passage across the Styx. His wife had to be punished, or she might set a bad example for others. He sent Sisyphus back to earth and told him to teach his wife respect. "Fooled him again," said Sisyphus, when he rejoined his devoted wife. They lived happily for many long years, till at last he died of old age and went to Hades for good. So again, Sisyphus has kind of escaped death. There he was given a task that kept him too busy to think up new tricks. He had to push a boulder up a steep hill, but every time he had almost reached the top, the boulder slipped from his hand and rolled all the way to the bottom again. So instead of just having to go to the underworld, Sisyphus was now he had to push a boulder up a hill, and whenever he got close to the top of the hill, the boulder would slip and fall back down. He had to do that for eternity. There are other versions where the hill is just eternal, and he just has to push the boulder up the hill eternally. But that is one of my favorite myths, partially because Sisyphus is clever, he, and he tricks the gods, and I always like that. Again, you don't have to do anything for me today. Just make sure you get your stuff done, and have a good one.